Hello, my name is Alex Brower. I am the Information Services Director at the Mississippi Library Commission, and I work very closely with our Center for the Book. The Mississippi Library Commission Center for the Book, which is affiliated with the Library of Congress, selects each year's Great Reads from Great Places book, titles that either are written by authors from the state, are set in the state, or that celebrate the unique culture and heritage of Mississippi. This year, a variety of factors were considered when choosing our selection, including how well the book represents Mississippi's rich literary heritage and embodies the spirit of our state. The book we selected for adult readers is Paddleways of Mississippi, Rivers and People of the Magnolia State by Ernest Herndon and Patrick Parker. I am honored to be joined by both authors today for a conversation about this great read.
All right, we're glad to be here.
Thank you all so much for joining me. So Ernest Herndon is the author of numerous books, including Canoeing Mississippi, and is a longtime outdoors editor for the Macomb, Mississippi Enterprise Journal. He has won
Mhm.
dozens of journalism awards and has been published in a number of magazines. And Patrick Parker is a physiologist, naturalist, and travel and outdoor writer. His work has been featured in U.S. News and World Report, the Washington Times, as well as many local publications like the Enterprise Journal, Bluffs and Bayous Magazine, and Eat, Drink, Mississippi. Thank you all so much for joining me. So before we dive into the book, we do have to plug libraries. So I was hoping that you guys could speak about the impact that libraries have had on your life.
Well,
Absolutely.
Antoine and I were talking about this just the other day, reminiscing about the Macomb Library. It used to be downtown Macomb. Now there's a much bigger facility in Macomb. But I mean, I have checked out a gazillion books. I used to be just the regular, I mean, all the time. I'd be going by there. I'd look in their new book section. Then I'd always be looking for something else. I remember, for instance, I checked out the unabridged War and Peace from the Macomb Library, and I read the whole thing and found
That
out
is
why it's abridged.
quite a feat.
Yeah. So,
I grew up in that Macomb Library down there by the railroad tracks. And
mhm.
from way before the time that I could drive, I would walk from my house 3 or 4 miles down Delaware Avenue to the library. And I would check out my limit of however many books, 10 books at a time. And on the way walking back home, I would take a break and usually have one or two of them read by the time I got home. So I was constantly in the library and sort of became the librarian's teacher pet or whatever you would want to call
Mm.
them.
That is so wonderful. I'm so glad that to hear that, especially the Macomb Library, really seems to have made an impact on y'all's life. That is so cool.
Mhm.
So kind of going back to the theme of the book, how long have you both been outdoorsmen?
Well, all my life, I declare, I guess, maybe starting at age, well, as soon as I could walk into the woods, I was always fortunate to live by woods, adjacent to woods. And so I was always out in the woods, building tree houses, climbing trees, building forts, exploring creeks, all of that. And and then I started floating rivers as a teenager. And well, no, I'll take that back. As a 9-year old, we built a raft and floated a creek. So all my life, Pat.
Very cool.
Uh, well, I was in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and my dad was in scouting as a scoutmaster, and all my brothers were Eagle Scouts. And so I grew up with this ethos of being outdoors. And by the time I got into scouts and got to be about 12 years old or so, I was convinced that I wanted to be a wilderness explorer or maybe a Mars colonist. And I wanted to be a writer so that I could write about the wilderness exploring and the Mars thing. And it seems like I just happened to come in about 100 years after the wilderness exploration got done with, And about 100 years before the Mars exploration got kicked off.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it seems like we're making pretty good strides on space travel. So you never know. You might be maybe closer to 20 or 30 years off from that instead of 100.
Maybe so.
Two very different, environments there. So how long did researching and writing Paddleways take?
I think the University Press guys asked us how long it was going to take, and I told them a year and a half, just to give myself some slack. But a lot of the research had been done in the previous 20 years by Ernest for his previous books.
Yeah, I started working at the Enterprise Journal in 1979, and the then managing editor was a canoeer, and he got me involved, and so I started canoeing then, fell in love with it, and as the years went on, being an outdoor editor, and I kept writing about the rivers, at some point I realized that I had material for a book, and as it turned out, the book that I wrote, which was over 20 years ago, was Canoeing Mississippi, a guidebook published by University Press of Mississippi. And then, yeah, you'll probably get into this, but thanks to Pat, we gave that new life and expanded it greatly and changed the focus into Paddleways of Mississippi.
Okay. So can you talk about like how you kind of expanded the focus, like what the difference was between those two titles?
So Paddleways, no,
Yeah.
Canoeing Mississippi, 20 some odd years ago, was a fantastic guidebook to canoeing all the creeks and rivers in Mississippi. And it became like the de facto standard. If you were going to paddle one of these rivers, you had to get the book to get all the inside knowledge. Well, along comes the internet and sort of obviated guidebooks. And when we got to talking about writing a new book based on similar material, I told Ernest, I don't think that there's really room in the market for a guidebook, because if somebody wants to canoe a river, they hop on the internet and look it up on Wikipedia, or find a blog from somebody that's already done it. And he said, yeah. And um, but I had this idea. He said that when he wrote the guidebook to begin with, he really didn't want to write a guidebook. He wanted to write a sort of a colloquial, anecdotal, homely history of stories and backwoods tales and that sort of thing. And I said, well, what if we take all the material from Canoeing Mississippi and we throw out all the put your canoe in here and take it out here, and it's so many miles between here and here and here, and expand and add to the material about the stories, and create a story of the rivers of Mississippi instead of a guide to how to paddle your canoe down them. And that sort of got him fired up, and he hopped into this project with me.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Very cool. Who doesn't love a backwoods tale? It is always fun to hear more of like the story of a city, or like in this case, like a river, than it is to just read facts about, how to navigate it or whatever. As someone who thinks in stories, that's what I love. And that's what I really liked about this book. So during the research process, this kind of ties into what we were just talking about. What story or piece of Mississippi's Riverways history surprised you guys the most?
Wow.
Ernest, you start on that one.
Okay. Um, well, I wrote the Canoeing Mississippi guidebook came out, I think, in the year 2000. and I kept canoeing the rivers of Mississippi. And so I amassed a whole lot more information doing that. And then when Pat and I decided to collaborate on this book, then he started injecting not only his own experiences, Pat, but uh, Pat is a masterful researcher. And he started finding just tons of information, historical information and geological, archaeological, et cetera, et cetera. But in particular, in answer to your question, I think what I was most enlightened about was the Civil War history that Pat really delved into. I'd gone into it a little bit for canoeing Mississippi, just as by way of background for notable sites, but Pat found just lots of fascinating stuff I didn't know anything about pertaining to the rivers in connection with the Civil War.
One story that pops into my mind is about Mule Jail. Are y'all familiar with the Mule Jail in Jackson? On the Pearl River, when the Yankees were coming just before the battles, the residents around the Pearl River got worried that their farm animals were going to be taken from them by the invading armies. So they herded all of their animals into this bend of the Pearl River, just south of the reservoir. What's the reservoir now? And then they dug a trench and cut that bend off and made it a little island and imprisoned their farm animals at Mule Jail is what they called it. And it's still there. You can go out there. I think that there's some houses or something that's built there now, but you can access from the other side a trail that goes around Mule Jail.
That is fascinating. I was not familiar with Mule Jail, and that is so cute. So, like, how did you guys? I'm sure there was a wealth of like weird, strange stories, especially that you found in your research. So, how did you kind of decide which of those to include in the book and which to maybe, kind of hold back? I mean, obviously, you're limited by what you can reasonably, put in a book, but, what was that process like?
Well, we promised the University Press guys that we would give them something like 75 or 78,000 words. And, um, and then we took all of our research and threw it in to the book, and it turned into like 125,000 word monstrosity. And then we began cutting. So everything went in, and a few things got cut.
Is there
That's right.
anything that comes to mind that got cut that you would like our watchers to know about? Any cool facts that you're sad didn't quite make it in the book?
No, I think
Well,
that it wound up a much stronger book for the editing and the condensation.
and our I guess you'd call it sample chapter that we sent to University Press of Mississippi was the Tangipahoa River, which is a small, really a creek down in southwest Mississippi where we live. Well, we put in everything since that was our sample chapter, and it was way more than you needed on that river for this book. And so we
Right.
wound up chopping a good bit of that out because the way we were going, we could have made the book on the Tangipahoa River, which I don't think.
Look,
But
that's
anyway,
your next project. You've got it.
yeah, yeah.
So there are a lot of really beautiful photographs in the book, and I see that Sam King is credited as the photographer. So can you guys talk about how you decided, which photos to include? Did you all go out together? How did those photos kind of come about?
Well, Sam
That's you.
King, yeah, Sam King took the Big Black River pictures. He's a friend of mine. He's a professional photographer, top quality, and he had such great pictures of Big Black. I asked him if we could use them. But otherwise, I just used pictures I had taken over the years for the newspaper, and I had a stockpile. So that was the simple way to do that.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So I also found, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Now, I had very few photographs that would be suitable for the book. Most of my photographs were from the Boy Scouts, and they were focused in on faces and personalities and that sort of thing. So you didn't see much of the river.
Well, that is the important part, you know.
Right.
Uh, I found the way that the chapters are organized in the book really interesting. You go from the Delta to Southwest Mississippi and then north and then back southeast and to the coast. So can you guys talk about why you decided to lay the book out that way?
Sure. It largely follows the organization of canoeing Mississippi from 20 something years ago. And um, the rivers in Mississippi are divided into, they're naturally divided geographically. So you have um, the Pearl River system, sort of up the middle, and its tributaries, and you have the Pascagoula River system and the Yazoo River system and their tributaries. And so it's roughly divided into those three river systems and a few others, like in the far northeast Mississippi, the geology changes dramatically because it's the Appalachian foothills, and the creeks and rivers up there were sort of stuck in a chapter by themselves because they did not go with the Pearl or the Pascagoula or the Yazoo. So, so it's largely organized by the geological constraints that put the rivers together.
Very cool.
And also, we included the Big Black River, which is its own narrow river system, and the coast, the coastal rivers, and a few in southwest Mississippi, like the Tangipahoa, which uh, are separate from those larger river basins too.
Very cool. I was just curious. Thank you all.
Mhm.
So Patrick, you and your wife Elise are credited with many of the maps featured in the book. So can you tell us more about how you guys developed those?
Sure. We got to the point that we figured we needed some more illustrations or maps, and I did not want um, like a photographic quality map. I wanted it to be more of a schematic map, as if you were putting into the river upstream, and you knew that eventually you would pass through all these points, and you knew what order you would pass through the points, but you didn't necessarily need to know how many degrees west or how many meters long this stretch is or that sort of thing. So I developed the maps as more of a line drawing schematic sort of a map, and traced them off of a light board from existing maps.
Very cool. All right. So in addition to information and history about rivers and paddleways, in the state, there are lots of tips on fishing in the book. So when you were doing your research, did you learn anything about fishing culture in Mississippi or learn a few new tips and tricks that you didn't know before?
Well, I in researching it, yeah, I learned the historical methods used by Choctaw and other tribes of the fish weirs, which go back hundreds or more years. Uh, and then by virtue of floating and wading and so on, and raising my son doing the same, and bass fishing and in the rivers and running trot lines and drop lines. So I'm not a passionate fisherman by any means, but when you spend a lot of time on the rivers, you naturally are going to do some fishing. So yeah, so we put some of that in there.
I am the youngest of five brothers, and my youngest older brother is about 8 years older than me. So I'm the late coming baby. And my dad deer hunted with my brothers, but by the time I came along and uh, got to an age to where I could go with him, he got tired of dragging deer out of the woods. And so he sort of switched to fishing. And so I did a good bit of fishing with him. And I'm sure that there's some of that um, either flavor or knowledge that went into the book. But uh, largely, I learned a ton about fishing just from reading Ernest's material that he put into it.
Very nice. Oh, look, the next time I go fishing, I'll have to check that out. Get some tips and tricks. So what is the biggest takeaway that you hope that readers get from Paddleways?
Well,
The
Ron, I'm sorry, go ahead, Pat.
the introduction to the book, the thesis of the whole thing is that the creeks and rivers and waterways were instrumental in every aspect of the development of the state of Mississippi, from the territory of Mississippi, from the Louisiana Purchase or whatever it was before it was a territory. And people arrived, the Native Americans lived on these waterways, drank, ate the fish and the wildlife that came to the waterways. They navigated on them. The European Americans arrived via these arteries. And the development of the state politically and transportation maps, you can only bridge or ford a river at a convenient place. So the rivers were instrumental in the growth of Mississippi, and that was the whole underlining thesis of the book for me.
And I want people to realize, because I think a lot of people do not know what phenomenal rivers Mississippi has. So many people think Mississippi's rivers are pretty much like the Delta rivers, slow, muddy, uh, you know, whereas there are just phenomenal rivers in Mississippi, clear streams, sandbars, big woods, uh, just all kind of variety from there's waterfalls, there's rapids, not a lot, but there's swift water, there's phenomenal wildlife, and there's just so much here, and so many people do know that. So that would be my thing.
Very cool. Well, that is all the questions that I had for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. And to our viewers, if you would like to check out Paddleways of Mississippi, definitely check it out from your local Mississippi Public Library or your local bookstore. And again, thank you guys so much for joining me. This has been a really great conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
Thank y'all.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. That was a really cool conversation.
The video you have just viewed is an MLC production, made possible in part with funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We encourage you to visit our YouTube channel and our LibGuides for further resources and supporting content.